Welcome to Rye Brook Focus. My name is John Mugno, and I will be your host today. Our guest for today's discussion is Bertolacci, the village's Parks and Recreation Superintendent. His responsibilities range from after-school programs to youth and adult sports and recreation events, such as the movies in the park. Bert, thank you for participating. And Bert, could you provide a brief introduction by telling us a bit about your background?
Sure, John. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to be here with you. I grew up in Rye Brook. I've been with the village. I started actually working as a camp counselor at the age of 13 in 1980, before the village was formed. And I've been, once the village became a village, I started working at the day camp as a counselor. I've been part-time through high school and through college. And after I graduated college, I was hired in 1993 as a recreation leader for the village of Rye Brook. And in 2000, I became superintendent of Parks and Recreation and have been here ever since. I'd like to say that the village is in a pretty good shape recreationally wise. I'd like to say it's in a better position now than when I started.
Oh, excellent. And that's a very long tenure, so congratulations. The last year has certainly been challenging for the Parks and Recreation Department because of the pandemic-induced restrictions on gatherings. But I know you've been able to run several of the programs nonetheless, and you and your team did a great job in improvising in order to provide some sports programs. Which programs were you able to offer, and how did you modify those programs to meet the health requirements?
Well, first of all, we weren't able to offer a camp last summer due to the fact of the pandemic, but we were able to offer some kind of activities to kind of get the kids out of the house and get them doing some kind of recreational things in the park. So we offered a bunch of activities. Some were good, and some weren't attended very well. But I had my camp sports specialist last year run some activities in the park, which the biggest one that we had was our volleyball program in the summer, and certainly we had about 35 kids in that section. And, we had to make sure that we sanitized the balls between every hit and all that other fun stuff to make it a safe environment for the kids. In the fall, we tried doing some virtual programs to kind of break up the monotony of the kids doing school from home and stuff like that. Those weren't that successful. So we took that and we tried to do some activities with the kids in the park, like kickball, wiffle ball, dodgeball. Those were pretty steady attendance. We had probably between 20 and 30 kids in each one of those programs. So that was good. And in the winter, we weren't able to run our regular basketball program. So we had to figure out a way to get the kids to do some kind of recreation. So in the months of January and February, we offered a flag football program in the park. In March and April, we offered an outdoor youth basketball program. And in the spring, May and June, we offered our Little League program. So we tried to keep the kids going all the time, keeping safety, distance, and all other factors to provide a safe environment for the kids. And I think we accomplished our goals.
Yes, and there was actually a survey of participants, or the parents of participants, that was conducted after the spring season, and the whole program and the people working in it got very high grades from the various parents. Were there any takeaways from the survey of things you might try to do a little differently, or because they pretty much supported what you're already doing, but I'm wondering if there was any takeaway about what you might do differently.
Well, there are some things that we may do differently. We did learn that the participants enjoyed doing an outdoor type basketball program. There are some that wanted to be indoors, but a good majority of them enjoyed being outside in the park, even though it was cold in March. The biggest problem, or the biggest thing with recreation, is creating fair teams. And that's always an issue. It'll always be an issue. But, we talked about, potentially having at the end of each youth sports season, having the coaches evaluate each player on their team, so we can kind of get a baseline of where they are at the end of the season. And obviously, we'll factor that into making the teams for the next year, but we still have to see them to kind of get a baseline if they improved or not. So those are pretty much the takeaways that we took away from the spring season.
Yeah, I think that kind of a challenge bedevils most children's recreation programs. I know when my own children were younger, it was always pretty fraught process because it's not that easy to evaluate young talent.
No, definitely not. And there's really no perfect way to do it either.
Right. You also started up a flag football program, which I believe was quite popular. Do you think you might be able to continue that in the future?
I believe we're going to be offering it in November of this year. It was very popular. We had about 108 people or 108 participants in the program, which was pretty shocking to me. I didn't think it would take off that big. But we're going to try and offer it again this year, like I said, in November. And we're also going to be taking one step further and offering a cheerleading portion of that program, where the cheerleaders and stuff will be on the sidelines cheering our players on. So it's a pretty neat step, and let's see where this goes.
Okay, and since it's a new sport for the village, I wonder how big a field do they play on, and how many players are on the field at any one time?
Well, it all depends on the number of kids that are registered in the program. We kind of try and break it up into teams. This past year we had seven on the field at a time, and everyone was eligible to go out for passes. The field is a 40-yard wide field, and they play 80 yard long field. So it's a modified field. We're able to do two games on our turf field, which is located here on King Street.
Right. That's a pretty big field, though, for younger children.
It is.
Now, the one program that couldn't be continued during the past year was the after-school program because the schools were closed, and those are the facilities you use. Tell us a little bit about that program.
Well, the after-school program is a state license program. We applied to the state for our license. The license allows us to do a multifaceted program. It allows us to do an educational portion of the program, and it also allows us to do a recreational portion of the program. So the educational portion of the program is we're able to help the kids with their homework. So there is a homework help section of the program, and that's broken in with a recreation portion. So the recreation portion, they would, first things first, they would get a snack at the end of the day because it's a long day for the kids at school. So we would give them a healthy snack when they get to the program, take attendance, and then they would go to the playground and then get into their homework. And then the homework portion of the program is probably between a half an hour to 45 minutes, or however long it takes them to finish a good portion of their homework. And we do hire some aides from the school district, which makes it a little easier for them to be able to help with their homework. So we feel it's a very, very strong program. We have between 40 and 60 participants in the program. The program has been growing each year that we run the program. So people come back year after year after year, which is a good sign that we're doing something right.
Right. And what grades does the program target?
We target elementary school ages. So the elementary school is from kindergarten through 5th grade. So that's our target.
Ah,
We
okay.
do take some 6th graders that have brothers and sisters in the elementary school.
Okay. And is this a common program in other districts, or are we one of the few or one of the many?
Well, I can't speak to the districts, but what I can speak is to the recreation departments. The Village of Rye Brook is one of 2 recreation departments that run the after-school program. The Village of Rye Brook and the Village of Pleasantville are the only 2 recreation departments that run the after-school program.
Oh, that's interesting. Creative, too.
Yep.
Now, the other thing I was going to talk to you about or interested in is the summer camp programs, because this year you've been able to, as compared to last summer, this summer you've been able to offer a more expansive program. Could you talk a little bit about what it's been this year?
Sure. I can tell you that we've been working with the Westchester County Health Department for the entire process. We've had numerous meetings to talk about safety at camp. The health department originally told us that we could have pods of 15, which started the ball rolling that, okay, we're going to have co-leaders in each group, because our groups range between 30 and 40 kids. So we're going to have 2 or 3 leaders in each group, and so we started hiring staff with the expectation that we would need 2 qualified individuals to run group activities. Couple of weeks before camp started, they eased their restrictions and allowed us to have pods of 36, which made things a lot easier for us in that most of our groups are under 36. So 1 group leader, 4 or 5 counselors per group, and we're able to do it like that. Travel camp, on the other hand, is a little more complicated. We had planned our whole travel camp with the expectation that, okay, we have a 1:15 ratio of pod sizes, and we need X amount of counselors to cover that group range, and there's no crossing of pods and stuff like that. So we planned our whole itinerary for travel camp, and then at the last second, the health department tells us that we can't go on half of our trips because we're not exclusive to the facility. So we had to redo our whole camp itinerary to conform to the health department's standard. So we redid the whole itinerary, and a week before camp starts, they said, you can do whatever you need to do for camp, just as long as, if you're outside, you don't have to wear masks, and if you're indoors, you have to wear masks. So the health department has been ongoing struggle with us, but at the end of the day, we're offering a safe camp. We're 5 weeks in, 1 more week of camp left to go, and everyone seems to be having a good time.
Yeah. The other thing which is interesting is that you read in the newspaper the difficulty of staffing seasonal jobs in particular, but you seem to have been able to do that. Could you talk a little bit about the process you went through to find counselors and head counselors and the people you needed? Was it much different than prior years?
Well, each year we get a good amount of counselors that come back. This year we had a lot of counselors that did not come back for whatever reason. We had a good amount of quality counselors that came back. some didn't come back, and it was very difficult to find replacements. This year, more than any other year, we were struggling almost until the first day of camp to complete our camp staff. Each department in Westchester County was going through the same thing. So I guess people were a little bit apprehensive with the pandemic going on to come back to work, and you know, we're happy with the staff that we ended up with. I think they're doing a great job, and we hope to have them all return for next year.
Good. Now, just today, or at least for me, it was just today, the state education agency said it was going to leave up pandemic issues to the local school districts. And I don't know if Blind Brook is prepared or has thought through what it's going to do, but still the uncertainty is going to create more of a challenge, I would think, because you're not going to know right away or very soon what's going to happen. So what's the plan?
Well, the plan right now is to go back to normal, in that we'll be in the schools. But this is an ongoing thing.
Right.
It's gonna take a lot of communication with the school district. Obviously, we're gonna go by their standards with regards to masks and all that other stuff. Our staff will be masked for the entire time that they're in the facility, and whatever standards that the school district has for the kids is the standard that we will have while we're in their facility. The safety is the most important aspect of recreation, and at the end of the day, we want to provide the safest possible program for all of our participants.
Yeah, it's just a question of when you'll even know what the rules are. That's, I guess, really what I took away from this newspaper article, because I don't know where Blind Brook is in formulating its own views. It sounded like most educational districts were thinking they were going to get guidance from the state, and now they're not. So it's going to be, I think, challenging, because it's going to be kind of needing to adapt. Let's hope that the situation continues to improve enough that you'll be able to, go along with your baseline plan rather than needing to improvise again.
Well, like I said, it's all about communication. Obviously, we're in constant communication with the Westchester County Health Department. We're constantly talking with the school districts. I think we have another conference call with the school district after camp is over to talk about the after-school program, hammer out the final details. So the key is communication. And I think we have a good relationship with the school district and also the health department.
Yeah. And I think from the standpoint of parents with children in the programs you run, the fact that last year, when everything was new, all the restrictions were new, the situation was changing, you still managed to put forward a very successful program that was run effectively. So I think there's probably a lot of comfort that you'll figure it out.
Well, that's what we hope.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Bert. I appreciate you being on the program.
John, it's my pleasure, and thank you for having me.